And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon on this Jimmy Buffett Friday. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
It's Friday. I got nothing.
I can see someone's already thinking about that weekend.
Yep.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the co-host of the Too Many Lawyers podcast, which you can download wherever you download your favorite podcasts. He's also a columnist over at the Two Lawyers Walk Into a Bar Substack, which we'll get to later on in the segment. ABC News legal analyst Royal Oakes. Royal, welcome.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, a double plug. I appreciate it, John.
All right. Well, thanks so much for stopping by on this Friday. Let's start out with the big story that's been the news all over the place of late, and that, of course, is the $50 million settlement that Starbucks made with a delivery driver here in Los Angeles who was picking up 3 hot teas, medicine balls to be exact. I hear that's hot tea with citrus and honey, and it's good to drink when you're not feeling well. It helps you snap out of that. Anyway, when the barista handed him the hot cups of tea, I guess one of them was not secured in the container and spilled out all over his crotch, giving him third-degree burns on his penis, on his groin, on his inner thigh. I guess no one told him, Royal, it's the biscotti you're supposed to dip in there. You're not supposed to dip in other things. So now this guy has a whole host of medical problems that are going to leave him with all kinds of issues for the rest of his life. And $50 million was the magic number that the judge and the jury agreed on. Let's start out with the number itself. $50 million is a lot of money, particularly when you think about what that woman in New Mexico got when she spilled the hot coffee on her crotch over in the state of New Mexico some time ago. That, of course, made headlines for years and years and years, but that number was nowhere near $50 million. Right now, in 2025, I guess $50 million is what you get if you have a burned crotch.
It is amazing how we get inflation in that area. And by the way, I liked your biscotti joke, and the idea is, of course, we have to work through grief with humor, and so you've proven that. $3 million, not that long ago, for kind of a similar incident. I think it's just a function of, when I started practicing law years ago, Texaco lost like $5 million to Pennzoil, and it was considered astronomical. Now, John, we don't even bother to say billion with a B anymore. That's reserved for trillion with a T. A couple of decades, it'll probably be quadrillion with a Q. So I think it's just inflation. So for a jury to give him $50 million to a guy who had something happen to him that none of us would want under any circumstances to happen for 50 million or 30 or 1 million, you just wouldn't do it. It just seems really wrong. Now, weirdly, Starbucks had offered $3 million to settle the case, and the guy agreed to it on the condition that Starbucks would issue a public apology and implement policy changes to prevent similar incidents in the future. And, John, Starbucks said, no, let's go to trial. How lucky do you feel, punk? Now, I want to know who got fired for that decision. Sure, Henderson, we'll pay $3 million, but we'll be damned if we'll apologize and try to figure out how to stop scalding incidents in the future. Isn't that crazy? I mean, some heads are going to roll, I think.
Well, if you're Starbucks and they're asking for something that costs you no money, that seems like a no-brainer to me.
Right. The thing is, from a publicity standpoint, it's crazy not to settle, I think. You get bad publicity over something like this, even if you win, even if you trounced poor Michael Garcia in court. And you weren't going to win because there was evidence that, as you said, a Starbucks employee didn't properly secure one of the drinks in the tray, causing the spill. So, even if you're confident, you might lose. And as we've just been talking about these days, you could lose very big.
I don't know if you saw the video, but I looked at that video many times, And it looked to me like the barista successfully made the handoff to the delivery driver in the car, and the delivery driver had all of the drinks in the car successfully. When he started to move them over, I guess, to the passenger seat or the center console or wherever it was that he was going to put them, that's when he fumbled the drinks. That's when the drink ended up on his crotch. Given the fact that the handoff was successful and the fumble occurred after the drinks were in his possession, are you surprised that the jury found Starbucks totally liable?
I am, and you make a great point, because in this kind of situation, the jury is obviously going to have a lot of sympathy, but also, most jurors, they have sort of a remnant of common sense there in the brain, and so you would expect it to lead to some sort of a compromise. I mean, this isn't like the Pinto case back in the day, where Ford Motor Company had that secret memo saying, well, we could change the design of the car, but that would cost $150 million. We've computed that it would cost $70 million to pay the horrific burn victims and their grieving families. So, doggone it, we're going to go with paying the burn victims. That's why the Pinto jury went crazy, but why the Starbucks jury went nuts, again, I think it's just a function of times have changed, inflation, and maybe jurors aren't quite so honest when they get in the panel. I've talked about my pet peeve. I think we should use lie detector machines when you walk into the courthouse as a potential juror. It's not going to shock them. We won't put them in jail if we conclude they're lying. But 95% of the time, lie detector tests are right, according to experts. So, goodbye. Here's a lovely parting gift. We're not going to let you on if you're a liar. But nobody buys that, so we're going to have to continue not knowing whether jurors are liars or not.
If you're the plaintiff's attorney here, what's the strategy? Is the strategy to just gross out the jury by putting up pictures on the big screen of the deformed penis and making them look at that day after day, hour after hour, right before lunch, right after lunch, to the point to where the jury just cries uncle and says, okay, give this man whatever he's asking for?
Absolutely. There are all sorts of trial lawyer tricks on both sides. One of the tricks is, end on a high note on a Friday afternoon because you want to send them off thinking about your strong point the whole weekend. And the trick is to make sure that you get in as much of the sympathy. I mean, it's like a few weeks ago, Rihanna showed up because her boyfriend, A$AP Rocky, was on trial. He could have gone away for 22 years for shooting another rapper. She shows up with their 2 toddlers. I mean, if the judge is going to let you parade the toddlers around, fine. The judge always has the problem. The other side yells and screams and says, oh, this is prejudicial. So the judge's call is, well, how much probative value, how much good stuff is in there as opposed to prejudicial inflammatory value? So, yeah, from the lawyer's perspective, you push the envelope as far as you can because they want the huge number. And by the way, the huge number is not going to survive on appeal, because the loser, Starbucks, automatically goes to the California Court of Appeal and says, Your Honors, you won't believe. Well, you probably will believe it because you read the papers, since you're really smart and good-looking too. You won't believe how ridiculous this $50 million is, and this is why. And almost always, the appellate court knocks it down, sometimes way down. I mean, Stella Lembeck, who won her multiple millions against McDonald's back in the day for her crotch wardrobe malfunction, she ended up getting a fraction of that after the appellate courts got through wringing the excess out of it.
If you're Starbucks, what do you do to protect yourself in the future? Because let's face it, you're going to hire a lot of teenagers with purple hair. And teenagers with purple hair are not going to be the most, box-checking type of person when they're getting the drink ready and handing it to you in your car. That much is going to be, you can count on that in the future. Are they going to start serving us tea that's not quite as hot as the tea they were serving before? What do they do here to mitigate their liability?
It's a real problem because, a crisis manager will come in, and invariably what they say after studying everything in focus groups, they say to the company, look, you pick out something to reach out to the public to show you're good guys, and then do even more. That's the strategy to really make lemonade out of a lemon. So how do you do that here? Now, you could cut the temperature. There are studies that were used against McDonald's that showed that the reason it was scalding hot before it got the grandma is because we sell more coffee if it's really, really hot. So you got to make sure that your files don't have anything incriminating like that. To the contrary, the files should reflect the fact that we're really concerned about this, and we are going to cut the temperature. We're going to double the training, and just send a message and do it in a public way. I mean, they could take out a half-page ad in the New York Times and say, we're so unhappy about this incident. Of course, there are legal issues that we'll pursue, but the fact is we hate it when our customers get hurt, and we're redoubling our efforts, and come on down and, see us, and the barista will call you by name, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, they do need to take several efforts publicly, PR-wise, as well as legally, to try to make sure this thing doesn't happen again.
We're speaking with Royal Oakes, co-host of the Too Many Lawyers podcast, which you can download wherever you download your favorite podcasts. Royal, Gene Hackman, the actor, the famed actor, and his wife died around the same time at their home in the state of New Mexico. The money that Gene Hackman made through the years was supposed to all go to his wife. She was significantly younger than him and was expected to outlive him. It didn't exactly happen that way. In the event that she were to die too, he had it in his will that the money go to charity. Now, he did have adult children, not with her, but from a previous marriage, who were not listed as beneficiaries in the will. That being said, his kids have lawyered up, and they say that because his wife is dead, the money now belongs to them. What do you make of what's going to happen there?
Well, they're right and they're wrong, because the wife died first. And what a tragic situation. Of course, everybody was so curious about it. I knew you were extremely curious on the air to kind of sort through the possibilities. We were all playing Hercule Poirot. It was a real classic murder mystery. But the fact that the wife died first, and apparently, the toxicologists and the pathologists and the Quincy's of the world figured that out. She's out of luck. Okay, so she gets nothing because she died first. Now, if her estate had a community property interest in a chunk or a half of some property that they jointly owned, just like in California, New Mexico has a community property law. That's one thing. But in terms of the bulk of the estate, she's out of luck. Now we turn to the kids. They're out of luck too, unless they can prove that because of his Alzheimer's disease, he didn't know what he was doing when he cut him out of the will. There's no way that they can sort of shoehorn themselves back into getting something just because they were the surviving kids. He had a right to give it to charity if he wanted. Of course, there's probably going to be a really ugly fight over the extent of his Alzheimer's and what his mental state was like when he made the decision to cut him out.
Does it matter that he didn't leave them $1 or specifically disinherit them? Because I've been told that if you really want to make sure that someone that you're related to closely doesn't get a piece of your estate, that you need to leave them $1 or specifically write them out of the will by name.
I've heard that so many times over the years, and it's kind of a Hollywood thing. The whole idea of, okay, I give you $1. Aha, if you challenge the will, you'll get nothing. Nobody's going to say, oh, crap, I don't want to challenge it. I'll lose my $1. Instead, whether they get $0 or $1 or $1 billion or everything, you're entitled to go to court just because whatever he said in the will, that sounds bad for the kids. It does not prevent them from saying, hey, Your Honor, he was demented, he was coerced, he had the advanced Alzheimer's, whatever. So unless they've got some pretty strong medical evidence that he didn't know what he was doing, then, and even if they can demonstrate that, it's not for sure that they would get the money. There are intestacy laws in New Mexico. If you don't have a will, the law says, oh, this is how we're going to divide up the money. Wouldn't necessarily go to those kids.
How common are situations like this? And I say that because humans are complicated. So sometimes you have a good relationship with your kids or your relatives, your parents, and sometimes you have a bad relationship with them. And who knows when the will is written and what your relationship was with that person when the will was actually written, but maybe your relationship got better, maybe your relationship got worse. I would also imagine that now with the divorce rates as high as they are, many people, by the time they get to an advanced age, are no longer married to the co-parent of the adult children. They've moved on, whether it be through divorce or somebody died and you got remarried. And then there's a whole separate family that's now involved in, maybe cutting up the pie in different places. How messy are these estates and are these wills and trusts nowadays?
Well, your instinct is right. It's really common. It's really messy. 50% of marriages end in divorce. You have multiple divorces. I mean, I can't imagine how they could sort out Larry King's estate. That would be a real head scratcher. But what happens is the judge has a template. The judge says, okay, this is what New Mexico law says about who gets what. It may be messy. We may have third cousins twice removed and divorces and so on, but there is a roadmap. Now the tough problem is, how do you know really what happened in terms of his state of mind and promises that were made? And is this really a valid will? Did it have witnesses? Some guys that literally take a pair of underwear, hopefully freshly washed, and take a magic marker and write their will on the underwear or on a wall. So the judge has to look at people who are making arguments and say, okay, I hear what you're saying about the Alzheimer's and so on. You've got a really strong motive to lie because you'd like a pile of money. So I'm going to take all the credibility issues into account. So then the judge just sifts it through the whole legal meat grinder. It's probably a bad mixed metaphor, and decides who should win, not based on what people want, but what they credibly can demonstrate, hopefully with some documentation.
We're speaking with Royal Oakes, columnist at the Two Lawyers Walk Into a Bar Substack page. Royal, let's shift gears and talk about what Elon Musk and Donald Trump are doing right now, where they have called on any number of judges who are blocking what they're trying to do, including deporting criminal aliens, to be impeached from office. Do you believe that any of these judges are actually in danger of being impeached?
Yeah, absolutely not. And thank you for the plug. In fact, this morning, a couple hours ago, I posted a column called No Virginia. There is no constitutional crisis, and the reason is that Donald Trump has not actually defied federal laws. Instead, he's just in a very cranky way fighting up the hill. So as part of the fight, as you say, Trump and others are saying, hey, this judge, he's not letting, we're not going to have a country here if we can't get rid of our illegal gang alien terrorists. But the problem is, as Chief Justice John Roberts said a day or two, it was really unusual for him to blast a sitting president. He did it several years ago, and Trump was president first time around, and he said, after Trump said, it's an Obama judge who made that decision. He said, no, there are no Obama judges or Trump judges. They're just honest federal judges. Well, that was weird for a Chief Justice to take on a president. Now he's done it again. He's basically said, we don't say let's impeach a judge just because we don't like their decisions. And impeachment is kind of similar to the presidential situation. We don't have a high crimes and misdemeanors phrase. Instead, it's just that, if you're not fit, if you don't engage in good behavior as a judge, you may be impeached. How? Same way. A majority of the House of Representatives would have to vote, we're going to impeach Judge Smith. And then 2/3 of the U.S. Senate would have to vote, hey, we're going to convict him. And boom, now he's out of the job and he goes to the retirement home for all judges. But that's not going to happen. For one thing, and I love this fact, the judge they're going after is Judge James Boasberg in Washington, D.C. Yeah, he was appointed by Obama, but he was also appointed by George W. Bush before that, a roommate of Kavanaugh when they were in college. Now, I ask you, John, what are the chances that Justice Kavanaugh is going to turn on his roomie, who was, probably his wingman when they were having keggers, and we know how Kavanaugh feels about beer, and is going to say, oh, yeah, we're going to make some big ruling against this guy and say he was unfit. I just don't think it's going to happen, but this is Donald Trump's way of being very aggressive. And, not everybody in the heartland knows all these inside baseball details about impeachment, so he's probably getting some good PR mileage out of it, but realistically, it ain't going to happen.
Boy, Washington, D.C. is so incestuous. The only judge I could think of, Royal, who was impeached was Alcee Hastings, who was a judge out of Florida. And after he was impeached from office as a judge, I believe that was for corruption, he ran for the United States Congress as a Democrat and won and served in Congress for decades.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And he's one of the rare exceptions. Out of 15 judges have been impeached since the beginning of the United States, only 8 have been kicked out. And, it's just almost impossible to do that. And as you say, it's so incestuous in Washington. I'm surprised everybody in Congress doesn't look like King Charles.
All right, Royal, what's coming up on the next podcast, the next Too Many Lawyers podcast?
Yeah, we're going to talk about this situation of the constitutional crisis. We also like to toss in some fun stuff. Connor and I, we loved the old Larry King column. You remember when he would have a column in USA Today and he would just have hits and bits and, what's better than the cornflakes and a box score? That's my idea of a perfect breakfast. We're going to start out with one that struck me. You remember Susan Boyle, that fabulous singer who was on Britain's Got Talent years ago?
Oh, yeah.
My thought is she's a fabulous singer. I think her career would have been a lot bigger if she looked more like Miley Cyrus. So we like to keep it light as well as all the serious legal stuff.
All right, so
I don't think I'd want to see her twerk, but
Make sure to check out the Too Many Lawyers podcast. You can also read Royal online at the Two Lawyers Walk Into a Bar Substack page. Royal, thanks so much for stopping by. Have a great weekend.
You too, thanks.
It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the host of the Evil Thoughts podcast. You can follow him on X at Joe Crummey, and you can check out his YouTube channel at Laurel Tunes 1, where his new song and video, Ready for Rain, is uploaded and ready for your enjoyment. Mr. Joe Crummey, welcome.
John, you do your homework. Amazing. Great. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you, John.
Now, Joe, I don't know if you've noticed this, but sometimes when people get nicknamed a certain thing, it starts out as an insult. It starts out as something that's supposed to be a pejorative. It's not supposed to be complimentary. And then after a certain period of time, they just embrace it, and it just kind of becomes part of who they are. I kind of see that happening right now with Nancy Pelosi, who was branded by Donald Trump as being a quote-unquote killer. And this was before she took Grampy Joe out and before she decided to shiv Chuck Schumer after cutting a deal with Donald Trump and the Republicans. But it seems to me like she's gotten even more aggressive going after people who have been longtime allies of hers since she's been nicknamed the killer by Donald Trump, where she kind of loves it. She loves the attention. She loves the nickname. And boy, does she prove it every day.
Well, what is she now? It's funny. Usually a hip replacement or whatever she got slows people down. Maybe not in her case. Maybe it's her oxygen. What is she now? She 83 now, or what is it?
I think it's like 84 or 85.
Yeah, well, she's a born killer. There she is. And then again, usually a hip replacement slows people down. Maybe she's the bionic woman now. There's a cultural reference for you that goes back a few years. She's she got U.S. taxpayer funded hip replacement. I'm assuming she did. Do you think she paid for it out of pocket?
No.
I don't think so. No, so she probably got a good one.
But and usually people mellow out with age, but not in politics. Not her. It seems like Biden got nastier as he got older. Chuck Schumer is at the height of his power. He doesn't want to give it up anytime soon. I don't know what the deal is, because you see people at the McDonald's at 7 in the morning, these old guys sitting around drinking coffee, reading the newspaper, talking about what's going on in the world. They're not screaming and yelling and tipping tables over. They're just mellow and having a good time.
Well, but power, is one hell of an aphrodisiac. I mean, they love this. It's funny because whenever I talk about senators on my podcast and stuff, and even Congress people, I always look up to see how long they've been serving. And it is just amazing. I mean, there's so many of them, they've been serving for 30 years or more. A lot of people, Maxine Waters, she was, I think, early 90s. I mean, that makes her, 30 some odd years now? It's amazing. These people, whether it's Congress or it's the Senate, they make entire careers out of it. And I look them up a lot. I go, hey, how long's that guy been around? It's over 30 years for a lot of these people. And in Nancy's case, it's more than that.
But it's something that's kind of unique to politics, because take the music industry, for example. When Metallica was in their prime, that's when they were tearing up all the hotel rooms and throwing chairs through windows and doing all of those things. But you never hear about 80-something-year-old Wayne Newton tearing up a hotel room.
No, not really. Let me give you an aside, though. It's really funny on the Strip, because I go by it all the time. back in the day, the Hyatt was the place where everybody tore up the hotel rooms in L.A. You come out to L.A., you'd stay at the Hyatt, and they called it. I mean, I remember this. I want to tell you something weird about it, though. They called it the Riot House, because, the metal bands, the hair bands were there to just people would go crazy there. But that was the nickname. Speaking of nicknames, actually this kind of ties into your Pelosi thing. If you drive by the Hyatt now, they have it etched in the glass. They have the Riot House etched in the glass now.
I love it. I love it because back then it was like a rite of passage to tear up a hotel room. And it wasn't just Metallica. Like the hockey teams would all do it. The pro wrestlers would do it. If you were anybody back then, you had to tear up a hotel room.
Exactly. And it was sort of, this thing. You'd drive by it with your hip friends who understood the game, and they would go, the Riot House. And now they've embraced it like Nancy embraces Killer, They've embraced it. It's etched in the glass. It's institutionalized now.
How great would it be if Nancy Pelosi tore up a hotel room at 84 years of age?
Yeah, well, why not? Yeah, and you've got to wonder what they've pumped her up on too. What kind of whatever. I don't know what's fueling that, but it could be. That could be it too. Some of these painkillers have her a little nutty.
How much do you think the rest of them hate having her around? Because typically what happens is if you are a star athlete, if you are a Michael Jordan, you don't, once you're past your Best By date, you don't hang out on the bench as one of these reserves that comes in and plays the mop-up time at the end of the game. You just retire and you go play golf and you do whatever. But not Nancy Pelosi. Instead of just retiring and enjoying the money that her husband has made off of all of her hot stock tips, she's sticking around and she's still causing problems for the people who are currently there.
Well, right, because she can still play. She can still bring it. I mean, if you're smart, you get out of the game while you can still perform so you don't embarrass yourself. But I don't think any embarrassment in politics. Maybe that's part of it. There is no integrity. There is no embarrassment. There is no self-reflection of what do I look like an idiot or not. Maybe that's it. I mean, if she's still capable of causing commotion, then she's still in the game.
What do you make of this Gavin Newsom podcast? This is Gavin Newsom's second podcast since being elected governor. The first one was with Marshawn Lynch. When he was lieutenant governor, he hosted a television program on the Current network. That was Al Gore's network. It seems like he'd much rather be a broadcaster than be a politician.
Well, I think I don't agree with the governor on anything. I don't like the man. I'll be honest with you about that. No shocker coming from me, but he's very shrewd. I think he's very shrewd. You know what he wants. Everybody knows what he wants. And this is his way of faking like he's running to the center. I think that's what you're going to see on these podcasts, and that's his way of campaigning. He's campaigning. He's running. So is, Cortez and these people, but then they see they're looking down the road a little bit. He's running. He's going to try to convince you, and he's pretty good at it too. Of course, the proof is in the legislation that he signs. That's different, but He'll give you a word salad on that until you're so bored you don't even know what he's talking about anymore. He's really good at that. But, he's running. That's what this is about, and he wants to convince people that he's sort of a centrist Democrat when he's not.
Do you think his backup plan is to be a broadcaster if it doesn't work out as a candidate for president? And I say that because we've seen this time again where John Kasich ran for president. That didn't work out. He did a weekend show on Fox. Jerry Brown ran for president, didn't work out. He tried talk radio. Same thing with Mike Huckabee and others. Do you think that is his plan B in case he's not elected?
I don't even think, it's possible, John. I wouldn't know what to tell you on that because I don't think he thinks he needs a plan B right now. This guy, I think he's got the look, which would be great for TV too. He's got the look. He's got that. He's very glib. I mean, I want to get back to his word salads. He's incredibly good at that. Where he just starts speaking and he just floods the zone with verbiage. He's incredible. and he thinks that's going to fly. I think he thinks he's the man, and I'm not too sure he's even worried about having a plan B.
Why do you think so many politicians try broadcasting? And I say that because so many of these politicians, they stick to the script. Whatever is in the teleprompter is whatever comes out of their mouth. Whatever is written for them is what comes out of their mouth. Yet you're filling 3 hours of time on the radio or 1 hour of time on television. You're speaking without a script day after day. That's not how these people are trained.
Right. It's really interesting because I remember doing TV in San Diego, and I did a bunch of it in L.A. too as well. And the thing that I used to notice, it was an interesting point you just made, is that I was the guy from talk radio. And all I wanted to see the red light come on and just, I'll take it from there, guys. Thank you. But everybody else in the studio, all the newscasters, they were dead meat without the prompter. They were dead meat, and they were afraid. If that prompter went down, they were dead meat. I didn't even want the prompter. I remember that. So I do think that a lot of the politicians don't understand that, if you're going to be in front of the mic every day, it's actual work. Number one, they all want to handle it the way Meryl, who is it? Meghan, who's the Prince Harry lady, Markle? What's her name?
Oh, yeah, Meghan Markle.
Didn't she want to do a podcast too? And it was all fake and nonsense. It's actual work. I mean, you actually have to be able to speak extemporaneously to do this stuff and do it for more than a soundbite. I mean, you actually have to craft an argument and get people to actually listen to you for extended periods of time. As I said, Gavin is really great, but it's all nonsense after a while. I mean, if I were listening to him, I'd want to shoot myself after a couple of minutes. Imagine having to listen to that word salad, as good as he is, for more than 5 minutes. I don't think so.
Well, the other thing, too, is that they're trained to never say anything interesting. Because if you say something interesting, then you're going to make the papers, and that may cause blowback, and you may get in trouble with the speaker or whoever it is that's the political boss at that time. You're in broadcasting. You better have an interesting way of delivering whatever message it is that you're trying to deliver, or else you're going to bore everyone to death.
Right, and I think that's exactly right. That's just what happens to a lot of these guys, that they think they can just do the political thing and not actually have something to say. I think you're kind of right, too, that when you're a politician, you want everybody to think they're hearing what they want to hear. And it's a really interesting skill. I hate it, but it's an interesting skill. How can I say something and make it seem as though everybody is going to hear what they want to get out of this? Which means I'm really sort of saying nothing here, but I want everybody to think that I'm telling them what I think they want to hear, right? Even though it's disparate groups of people at the very same time. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's one hell of an art.
Here is a review of Gavin's podcast from Sunny Hostin from The View. Here is what she had to say.
Let me guess. She hates it. Let me guess. She hates it. I mean, because he's not nutty enough. Am I right?
You are correct, sir. Here is what she said. I just think this is a poor strategy for Gavin Newsom. If you're going to be a public servant, you better be unapologetically authentic because voters can sniff out inauthenticity in a second. And I thought that was one of the most inauthentic things I have seen Gavin Newsom do, end quote.
Well, he's good at being inauthentic. She's good at being a nut. I mean, she's really good. She's really good at being a nut. And because I unfortunately, when I do the podcast every day, you got to listen to some of the clips, and she's an authentic nut, and he's an inauthentic nut. But nuts the same. They're still nuts. One's a fake nut, and the other one is an authentic nut.
Joe Crummey, host of the Evil Thoughts podcast. You can follow him on X at Joe Crummey, and of course subscribe to his YouTube channel at Laurel Tunes 1. Joe, thanks so much for stopping by. Have yourself a great weekend.
My pleasure, John. Thanks for putting me on your show.